Okay, so I'll start. Again, Amy Sjoblad, I'm employed with Rural MN CEP. I'll give you a little background. I graduated from the U of M with a degree in speech and hearing science that I'm not using. I had a minor in psychology and then another minor in developmental disabilities. So after I graduated, I worked with adults with disabilities for some time. Then I moved into HR. I worked in HR within manufacturing, within healthcare, within education for about 21 years. Makes me sound old. And then I moved into finance. And then just a couple of years ago, I took a shift and moved to Rural MN CEP. And it's so interesting to hear about people's experiences. I feel like all my paths have really naturally led me to workforce development. So that HR experience can lend some expertise. So I'm hoping to share that with you today. So here's what we are going to do today, our agenda. So I'd like to start out talking about today's workforce, include some labor market information that DEED has in regards to our region. I should step back and say what my role is at Rural MN CEP. My title is RC3, which stands for Rural Career Counselor Coordinator Business Specialist. So I have 3 different tiers of responsibilities. So number 1, I'm a career advisor, and I work within the Cass Lake Bena High School. So I advise high school students, which is a really great talent pool. Number 2, I train and mentor the career advisors within our region. My region is 26 counties within Northwest Minnesota. And then the last is regional planning. So Rural MN CEP partners with DEED and really is focusing on workforce development initiatives. What are we hearing from employers? So a part of my job is to meet with employers within the 26 counties to find out what are your barriers? What are you struggling with? So I'll share some of that data with you today as well regarding employer perspective. We'll talk about, when we all know there's a labor shortage. So what does that mean? We'll focus on recruitment is one piece of the puzzle and retention is another piece of the puzzle. So we'll spend some time on that. We will take a little bit to do an organizational assessment exercise to look at our organizations, how diverse and inclusive are we? We will then take a break and then we'll go into resources to assist businesses with managing, recruiting, and retaining employees. There's so many resources out there that are at no cost that I want to make sure all of you are aware of. So let's dive into today's workforce. And initially, I'm going to talk about Region 5. And so that includes the Cass County, Crow Wing, Morrison, Todd, and Wadena counties. Okay, so Region 5. So just a few demographics for you, which I thought was interesting. This again is obtained on DEED. You all, I should say, in your packet have all of these slides. Excuse me. And so the source, how you would find this information is the regional profile. I'm gonna grab some water, excuse me. Okay, so if we look demographically, population increase from 2010 to 2018. What I did was I'm comparing Region 5 to Minnesota statewide. Excuse me. And you can see that our population is growing slower than the state. What does that mean? That means less people entering the workforce. 55 years or older, Bonnie mentioned earlier, we do have a large aging population. What does that mean for our workforce? It means we have more people leaving the workforce. It also could mean that could be a hidden talent pool to really consider people 55 years of age and older for your job openings. No surprise, white population, not very diverse here in Minnesota or in Region 5 compared to Minnesota statewide, but we do have more diversity when it comes to the American Indian population. Unemployment rate, pretty comparable, Region 5, 4.5 versus 4.3 statewide. Although within our unemployment rates in Region 5, they were highest among younger workers, American Indians, people of some other race is how DEED defines that, and those with disabilities. So again, that could be a hidden talent pool. a place where you could find volunteers or employees. Excuse me. Median hourly wage, not a surprise that we are lower pretty significantly from the median wage Minnesota statewide, $17.28 versus $20.95. And yet, when you look at our wages of there's 13 EDRs in Minnesota, Economic Development Regions, and our region 5 has the lowest wages. And that's really of all the Minnesota regions. For cost of living within Region 5, those 5 counties I mentioned earlier, we have the highest cost of living. Okay, so we definitely have some challenges before us. I feel like I'm a Debbie Downer today. Couple that with how our labor force is declining. So again, in our Region 5, from 1990 to 99, we had an average of 1,810 new workers per year. 2000 to 2009, 668 average new workers per year. And now 2010 to 2018, negative. So we had, negative 174 average new workers. Okay, so moving on. Now this is part of the regional profile on DEED, which I would highly recommend all of you reading. Very great information. But I'll go ahead. I know you all can read. I'm going to read this so everybody can hear. And this was from the DEED labor market analyst, Chet Bodine. I don't know if any of you have ever talked with him. Amazing person. He invited all of you to contact him if you have any questions. He could answer that question in a heartbeat for you. Increasingly tight labor markets, right? We also have a growing scarcity of workers. It's recognized as one of the most significant barriers to future economic growth in our region. In the face of these constraints, it has become evident that a more diverse workforce, and what do we mean by diverse? In terms of age, gender, ethnicity, disability status, immigration, has been and will continue really to be the vital source of workers that employers need to succeed. Another important point, as the white native-born workforce continues to age, younger workers of different ages, of different races or from different countries will comprise the fastest growing segment of the labor force. So here again, it's pointing at us to consider those employees that maybe we haven't in the past. The hidden talent pool, which we'll talk about more. So that's just a little data regionally. So I mentioned earlier about my work in regional planning. So what are we hearing from employers? And this would be in all 26 counties of Northwest Minnesota, so the Northwest Quadrant. It's regions 1, 2, 4, and 5. We're hearing from every employer the common barriers with the labor shortage: childcare, transportation, and housing. And it makes sense, if we don't have housing, then how do we get employees to come and work at our companies? So that's a huge thing. Transportation has also been a big barrier. Our employees need to get to work. And then childcare, for those that do have children, there's a lot of initiatives going on in the state of Minnesota to help make opening a childcare business easier. There's so many regulations, so there's a lot of initiatives going on there, and funding for those childcare providers. So as a result of that, what are we hearing? So we're hearing, no surprise, we do not have enough job candidates for job openings. So what does that mean? Like in manufacturing, we have our manufacturers that are saying, you know what, we have people, customers that have orders that we can't fill. We have to turn them away, which is really, really unfortunate. In the healthcare, that means there are beds that they can't fill. So definitely a crisis that we need to address. How are we doing that? Utilizing resources, again, to hire hidden talent pools. So really looking at the aging population, looking at individuals with disabilities, and I'll share later some resources that can help you with all of these. Hiring ex-offenders, individuals of different ethnic backgrounds, and individuals who have immigrated. So we're really seeing that employers are, sometimes companies can be competitive, but this is one area that we're finding employers are working together. Yes, let's get together, let's talk about how we can address this. So with challenges, there's opportunity, right? The last one on there is what we're hearing from employers are saying, you know what, we can't get people to come work for us. We really have to hone in on retaining. What can we do with our current employees to keep them here? Okay? So recruitment best practices, I don't think this is real rocket science, but these are some of the summits that we've had with employers, and we always have roundtables where we get together and talk about best practices. So these are some of the things that our employers have said they've been doing to try to attract employees to their company. So on the left would really be those kinds of things that cost money, right? That on the right would be some of the more creative things you can do that don't cost money. So sign-on bonus, we had a gentleman from a healthcare facility who talked about $25,000 sign-on bonus.
25,000?
Wow, yeah. I'm like, well, yes, sign me up, I'll come to your company. But not, we don't have that luxury. Employee referral bonuses, so even $100, $50, I've seen $25 where, your current employees would refer somebody to your company. So that's a good way to attract. Loan forgiveness, this is pretty common, I think, in the healthcare industry too, where after you've worked for them for so long, they would pay off some of your student debt. What a great concept that is. Again, not a luxury that we all have. Tuition reimbursement. And tuition reimbursement could even be offering your employees to go to a training session. And I don't know if any of you, like the chambers in our local areas, have training sessions that are open to non-chamber members, if you're not, that are pretty cost effective. So that can be an option. Employees in general, if they feel valued, if you're willing to invest money, and if they can learn and grow. Recognition program gift cards are fabulous. Even the dollar store, it's amazing what a $1 gift can, do. CEP has on-the-job training. Has anybody ever heard of that program? Rural Minnesota CEP's program? Yeah. Okay, good. I have a lot of people that say no. I have a lot of people that say I haven't even heard of Rural Minnesota CEP. So I always like to ask that question. So what that is that program is you hire the employee, so they're your employee, but Rural Minnesota CEP will pay up to 50% of their wages for a specified time. So it's a really good way, again, to get some reimbursement, some financial assistance. On the converse side, Rural Minnesota CEP also has a work experience program, and that is where it's the Rural Minnesota CEP's employee, not your employee, and CEP pays all of their wages, but it's an opportunity to get them some work experience. So it could be a stay-at-home mom that has no current work experience. Great program to get her some actual experience. You don't have to pay, we pay, and we've had some situations where, great employee, I want to hire them on. So it's kind of a trial period, again, at no cost to you. So that could be a great resource for all of you.
Is Stearns County eligible for that?
Yes, Yep, there's a Rural Minnesota CEP. Rural Minnesota CEP is in the Workforce Center, which now has been changed to Career Force. Has anybody heard about that?
No.
I know, so that's going to take some time. So Career Force is really a partnership between Rural Minnesota CEP, between DEED, the workforce centers, the vocational rehab services, and the state services for blind. So if you go to the St. Cloud Career Force location, Jim, they could help you with that. It's connected to the St. Cloud Community and Technical College. It's called Career Force, formerly Workforce Center. That's one of our best kept secrets. I think so many people don't know about this program and can be a really great opportunity for the employee as well as the company. 100% back to the cost. We have some employers where they'll match if an employee donates money to their charity, the employee will match. And humanitarian efforts are.
Could you give me an honest opinion about the employee we're getting? I mean, so the one on the left, we find the employee, and the one on the right, it's somebody who needs experience. I mean, I'll be totally blunt. We can hardly afford a problem employee. We're so
absolutely.
understaffed. So what's your experience with the quality of the person who we're getting if we're going
Right.
with your employee?
And so what that is about communication. So I'm not the person that actually places the work experience candidate for you, but the person who does, the team leader or the counselor, would chat with you. So it's communication, like what do you need? What would it take to be a good employee? You know, just communicating, and then they would be honest, you know what, my employee hasn't worked for 20 years, so might not really, it might be a youth that doesn't have those professional skills that we learn. So I guess it would be honesty, and making sure we know what you want, and also making sure that we tell you what you're getting. Great program. So on the other side, we are finding a lot of companies are saying, you know what, we're engaging with high schools because that's a talent pool right there. I mean, there's a lot of students in our region who aren't going off to college. So that's an amazing, I would think, talent pool for all of you. So, you know, for those entry-level positions, engaging with high schools, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. One of the things I do as a career advisor is I coordinate the internship program. Region 5 Development Commission has had an intern, a student intern, which really worked out well for both. So that's something to think about too, where you don't pay that student's wages. Pequot Lakes has a really nice program where the student needs to work at least 10 hours out in the field with a mentor, and then it's coupled with academic credit, so the student does not have to be paid because they're getting that academic credit. I coordinated the Pequot Lakes one, so we had a student in welding, we had a high school, and generally it's seniors who have said, this is clearly a career path I want. It's not like a job shadow where you're checking things out because the employer is investing time. It's students who are truly interested in, you know, working in your industry.
They're considered an intern. Okay.
Yeah. It is a lot about relationships and networking. Flexibility with schedules, you know, where the typical 8 to 5 doesn't really always work for all of the generations. So that can be a way to attract people. Work-life balance focus, verbal recognition, obviously that's very important. We talked about the work experience, fun, posting jobs. MinnesotaWorks.net, has anybody ever used that? Okay.
I did good jobs on it.
Good. It's Minnesota's largest database, employment database, and it's free. So I do have a brochure in your folders as well that goes over those details of how to do that. So and you can also search for candidates on that website as well. So yeah, and again, no cost, so that's nice. Social media job postings, you know, if you're with some companies that are like, oh, I don't want to go there, but that really seems to be the trend. That's a really great way to connect with candidates. All right, let's move on and talk about employee retention, the other leg of the answer to the labor shortage. So what do you all think? So, you know, here are some reasons why employees leave. Money, maybe bad boss, lack of recognition, not challenged, overwhelmed. Sometimes that happens to our top employees, right? The good employees, they get more and more work and they're overworked. Job is not what expected. What do you think is the top reason why employees leave?
Lack of recognition.
Any other guesses?
I think
And that's a
also
big
the
one.
Boss also.
That's a big one as well. I notice none of you are saying money, and that's true. It's not always about money. So, you know, for example, some employer that we met with in manufacturing, he's like, you know what, the company down the street, our competitor, I know they pay $1 more an hour. I can't do that. I cannot increase wages by an hour. So I have to do what I can for employees to make them feel valued and have fun at work, make the culture here better. That's all that he could control. Yeah, so it's not always about money. And that statistics studies show only 33% of employees are engaged at work. And you know, as a career advisor working with youth, we're really honing in on that. Your interests, what are you interested in? You know, 16-year-olds might be like, I don't know. Or what are you good at? I don't know. Well, what do you do in your free time? You know, asking questions to really identify those interests and skills, yes, are important. Just like when you're interviewing, making sure you're, you know, telling the candidate what that job entails so there's clear expectations, which is one of these on here. So I found this article, I liked it because it was colorful and it had a few cartoons and it's kind of fun, not so professional, but really good content. So if you want to read the article, I have the link below. So it really talks about how can we keep our employees happy and stay within your organization. So just 5 quick points: clear expectations. So communication is so important, like we've talked about. Good leadership, ability to share feedback. Our employees want to be heard. Utilize their talents and skills and make sure they're feeling valued and appreciated, like Natalie mentioned earlier. So it's really not rocket science, but there are little things that we can do that can really make a difference. Okay. So clear expectations of the job. Starting with job description. I don't know if you're aware of this, but if you have any open new positions that you're hiring for, Career One Stop has a really great tool to help you create a job description. And it might not even be bad for you guys to just go through these steps just to maybe update your job description. But what you would do is you go to Career One Stop, and I've got the directions right here in your handouts, and you would select, say, clerk or cashier, and then hit go, and then it will give you like tasks, skills, abilities, credentials, experience. So it can be a good way to look and see, you know what, maybe we should add that. Maybe that would be, you know, a good way to enhance our job description. So just wanted to make sure that you all are aware of that. So great, we all have our job descriptions. Regular meetings, obviously very important, is to make sure that you're meeting at least, you know, once a week with your staff. Open lines of communication, not a surprise there, right? Access to manager, you know, making sure you have an open door approach. We have one of our companies, again, who couldn't really compete with the wages, but the owner of the manufacturing plant would at every shift change go out and actually talk to all the employees, which really says a lot to employees. You know, you're working on the line, you know, the owner actually cares about me, knows about me, asks about my life. So performance reviews, we probably I'll have that in place as well. Again, that's making sure we're communicating, you know, not only what they're doing well at, but what can they improve upon. So with performance reviews, we want to make sure that there are no surprises, right? Like, wouldn't that be the worst? Like, you go for your yearly review and your supervisor's like, well, Amy, by the way, I've noticed that you haven't been doing this like all year long. You couldn't have told me about this before, so I could have improved. So, you know, really making sure that there's no surprises and that performance review is a conversation. But employees generally aren't like, I can't wait for my performance review, right? But if you stress, there's no surprises. You know, this is just a conversation. Hopefully they won't be sweating as much when they come into your office. And there's a lot of resources too for performance reviews if you want to, you know, enhance that as well. Talked about job description. Leadership, so that's obviously really important. Communicating with your staff and your volunteers, positive and constructive. Being a mentor, I mean, really your main job as a manager is your employees. And some people would say, well, no, it's really the bottom line, but focusing on your employees will help you reach the bottom line, obviously. Provide opportunities to contribute and make a difference, like Bonnie mentioned earlier, or Kathy. Fair and equitable treatment. And you know, if your employee's not doing well, it's really easy to say, well, what's wrong with them? But maybe just consider and ask yourself, what is it about the process or the policy that's causing this person to fail? So looking, internally as well. Any questions about that? Lots of resources about leadership. Very important. Okay, so using talents and skills, right? We want our talents to be utilized. So understanding your employees' past experiences, I think, is really important. I'm a really good example because my human resources experience, I have a lot of experience that I'm really not necessarily utilizing in my role. But my manager's like, well, Amy, I know you've done HR before. What do you think? Just asking about that past experience. Really, again, it just makes me show that he values me and knows that I have skills. Help your staff identify skills and talents. Some of us aren't real good at identifying what we're good at. Asking. ONET Online, right there, has an assessment where you can look at work values, which can really help you identify what do your employees like. Are they valued and motivated by achieving and making progress? They might be motivated more by recognition. So it's really understanding your employees, and it's a good assessment. Provide projects to learn new skills, right? Most of us want to learn new things. So whenever, do you have any staff that are like, I don't want to learn anything, don't give me anything new, just let me do my thing? Yeah. There are some though, not to assume, some that are like, you know what, I just like my job, I just want to do what I do. Mm-hmm. And there can be value in that, right, because that employee could be there for years and years. Strengths Finder, I don't know if any of you have had the experience to complete that exercise.
We also did that Region 5, and it was
okay, isn't it? Mm-hmm. There's a cost to it. Do you remember how much?
I think each book was maybe around $20.
That's what I was thinking too.
Typically, you have to buy the book.
Mm-hmm. Right, and then there's a come on in and tell us more about it.
There's a code in the book, and it lets you take an online assessment, and then and it's personalized to you specifically. So even if she might have the same strength that I do, what you get back really tells you your answer. So even though she's an achiever and I'm an achiever, our results are different. So it's really, really cool. And we did it as a group, and I also did it at the previous company I worked at before Region 5, and it's a really good tool for working in a team.
Mm-hmm. And it's about utilizing your talents. Like, you don't want everyone to have the same strengths, so if your team member is good at something that you're not, let that person take on that project. How many strengths are there? There's like hundreds,
There's a
isn't
lot.
there?
Yeah, and
remember.
I think the coolest thing too is it is focusing on your strengths rather than saying, hey, you should try to be better at this. It's saying you're really good at these things and how to kind of enhance that, which is really, really nice.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
Good. I know in smaller companies sometimes you need people that are good at everything. But yeah, really good resource. Set your staff up for success with tools, time, and training. Cross-training, and I'm assuming that you probably do that within your co-ops just because it is smaller. So they're not learning just how to run the till, but they're stocking, they're doing a variety of things, I'm guessing. And then networking and volunteer opportunities. You might have some, employees that are shy that don't want to go out and network or go to the chamber events, but you might have some that would just love that and be complimented that you trust them to represent the company. So again, it's understanding their strengths and their likes. Any questions about that? Employees need to be able to speak their minds freely, but yeah, getting feedback somehow. Even the old suggestion boxes, do you remember that back in the day? And I'm curious how many companies still have it. You're still getting feedback. Okay, work culture. I know time's going so fast. We're just having so much fun, aren't we? So work culture. I love this quote. This was from one of our summits. If you don't think culture is important, then that is your culture. Should love that? I don't know. I love that quote. Because it is important. So let's talk a little bit about that. Just some questions to ask yourself. How many of you, do you all have a website for your co-op, or do you have just a general one for the, okay, good. So, look at your website, from an outsider perspective, what does it say about your company? For instance, if there's no mention about work-life balance or fun or diversity or inclusion, then that's what it says about your company. So, think about what values, what is your mission, is your values, is that really incorporated in all of your website, not just that mission, vision, values page. What does your new hire onboarding process tell new employees? We'll talk a little bit more about that. First month, very, very important with a new employee. That is critical where they're deciding, what, is this what I expected? Am I gonna stay or am I gonna move on? So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then last, have you considered doing a stay interview instead of just an exit interview? Okay, so honing in on that new employee. Why do you wanna stay? Asking those questions rather than, why are you leaving us? You can get some different good data. Cost, Bonnie, I think you were talking about that earlier, and you were kind of right on. So what is the cost to hire and onboard a new employee? Average $4,129. And that's according to SHRM, a very, very reliable source when it comes to employment initiatives and practice. That's a lot. So these are some questions to ask, really to identify if you're like, what is my work culture? So, do you know why people are leaving? What are the ambitions of your employees? Do you have opportunities for them to advance, learn, and grow? Do you have a budget for training? We know most employees want to grow and learn, so what have you budgeted for that? What makes you an employer of choice, and what would you need to improve? What's the first day of employment look like for your employee? Have you ever had that job where you showed up on your first day and they weren't prepared for you? You didn't have a place to go, no supplies. They're like trying to figure out where to put you. I've had that experience. Did I stay there long? No. What other steps do you take to onboard employees? What about wages? Are they aligned with regional wages? So let's go to occupations in demand. Again, Deed has a really great tool. If you go to the Deed website, and it's right there, actually, the whole link is right there in your handout. So this is, again, Region 5. I just got this updated information for 2019. So Jim, I think you had said you paid your clerks, was it $12 an hour?
I think so. I might have
Okay.
been 10 at one time. I think we've been increasing it, but
Yeah.
if somebody's good, they better a lot, they get 12.
Right, so you're right in line. So, it's not a surprise that food is, on the low end. Oh, I forgot to change. I think this is stock clerk. I had switched those because I wanted to do it in order of money, and I'm sorry about that. PCAs, retail. So I have, high school median hourly wage, and then some college or a 2-year degree median hourly wage. Pretty fascinating what some wages are for a 2-year degree, isn't it? Interesting. $34.97. Tremendous opportunity for our youth. Okay. First 30 days is critical. So I just have some stats in here, which I think are really interesting. Negative onboarding experience results in new hires being 2 times more likely to look for other opportunities. I think that's interesting. 58% of employers say their employees say their onboarding program is focused on processes and paperwork, and it really should be focused on people. Gallup found that only 12% of employees strongly agree that their organization does a great job of onboarding new employees. So really, I think every company could probably enhance that process for their new employees to some degree. So prepare for your new employee, just a few tips. Before your first day, again, make sure they have what they need. They have their cubicle or whatever area set up. Make sure coworkers know they're starting. It makes a big difference if their coworkers are like, hey, welcome to the team. Set up welcome lunches, a work buddy. That might be you as the supervisor, but just make sure there's a mentor. First day, paint the big picture. So talk about, like you were saying, the big picture, how their work as a clerk or a cashier contributes to the whole organization's success. How do you define and reward success, achievement, that strength? So questions to ask new employees to show you value them. asking, so far, is the job what you expected? That can be really good information too for you as you do your future recruiting. What would you like more training in? Does your work pace seem too fast, too slow? Improvement? Have we made you feel welcome? And then any areas we can improve on. I love this. A person who feels appreciated will always do more than is expected. I truly believe that. So, welcoming, inclusive workplace. So what time are we at now?
10:34.
Okay. So has anybody heard of this workplace toolkit? It's free. It's Be MSP or Make It MSP. It's signed up, it's set up to have modules for your organizations to talk about diversity and inclusion. Okay, so there's lots of resources available for you. So these can be really helpful for smaller companies that might not have an HR department. So the handout, there are a couple handouts. This first one is in your packet on the right side. It's an employment resource guide for employment-related questions. So it just shows if you have a question about, accommodations, what federal or state agency would you contact? So great resource. There's another handout in your packet that's called Resource and Information to Help Your Business Grow. Great resource. It has information about business development. It has resources about business financing, so how you could maybe get some grants to do your work, exporting assistance, workforce recruitment and training resources, and then just general information and resources. So that's put out by CareerForce, so both of those documents I think will be very handy for you. There's also, I didn't have handouts, but these two are on Deed. The legal guide to the use of social media. There's so many legal parameters around this new world we live in. So that would be a great resource. And then why and how to conduct an HR audit in Minnesota. Really great resource as well. Online resources for employers. So again, I mentioned minnesotaworks.net. That's at the top. You can also find workers. So you can post your jobs. You can also find workers. That link is right there. careerforceminnesota.com. Great website that you could go to. They have a section for job seekers and employers. And then for employers, they have a section how to attract employees, how to develop employees, and how to retain employees. So there's some toolkits in there, great resources. Information regarding wages. So Jim, if you wanted to look at your area, that link is right there. D just has so much labor market information. If I had like a week, I would just, have so much fun to dig in there and just play. So that's free, and again, Chet Bodine is our labor market analyst, and he, if you just contacted Deed, I'm trying to think if I have his information on there. Chet Bodine, so if you contact Deed, ask him to be connected, or the website actually has his contact information too. Any questions about that data that I provided, Chet could answer that right off the top of his head. Amazing guy. Chet, Ch-E-T, or C-H-E-T, Chet Bodine. There's also Employer's Guide to Employment Law Issues in Minnesota. Really great resource. There are hiring incentives and tax credits for you as a business through the Work Opportunity Tax Credit. Has anybody ever heard of that? Yeah. You hire someone with a disability or an ex-offender. Hiring veterans, there's some resource on that link for you. Labor market information for recruiting, there's another link there. If you happen to have an employee that says, you know what, I'm starting to get tingling in my arm, carpal tunnel, the askjan.org is a really great resource. You could go in and enter carpal tunnel, and it would give you some ideas and suggestions of how you could accommodate that person. So, and it's free of charge. Really great resource. This just talks about minnesotaworks.net, so shows How many searches? On average, 5,573 job searches a day. So great resource. Programs to assist business. So I'll talk quickly about these. Dislocated Worker Program is through Rural Minnesota CEP. An amazing program. So if, let's say you ever had to lay off an employee, they could come to the Career Force, which is Rural Minnesota CEP, and we actually provide reimbursement for tuition. We'll pay for transportation, for uniforms. Amazing program. And again, it's through the state of Minnesota to help laid off workers. We already talked about the work experience program on the job training. Tax credit, more information about that. You can get some significant tax credit based on if you hire these particular individuals. Vocational rehab services, that's part of Career Force as well. If you contact the Career Force and ask for the VRS person, they actually have a huge talent pool. Like if you provide them your job posting, they will forward it to 30 plus different agencies. Again, no cost. They also provide education about reasonable accommodations. One in 5 people have a disability. You probably heard that, right? And of those with a disability, up to 60% have a hidden disability. So you have employees with disabilities, whether you know it or not. Resources for hiring ex-offenders. We have a lot of great success stories about someone that, made a mistake. Have you guys ever heard of Emily Baxter? She has a book and a presentation that says we're all criminals. And it's about how all of us pretty much have likely committed a crime of some kind. Jaywalked, that's against the law. And it's really about giving people who have had a criminal record a second chance and the loyalty that it can bring. So again, it's a hidden talent pool that a lot of companies weren't considering before, but with our labor shortage, great opportunity to find a good employee. Federal bonding program, these are just resources for ex-offenders. Questions? Okay, well thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're a great group.